All right. So good morning and hope you had a great weekend. We would be starting for today with the remainder of the routing, which is the second part as far as routing is concerned. So let's create the day 9 folder, and then we are moving closer to the completion of the whole course. After this included, there are 4 more sessions that are remaining. So we may be completing by Monday next week. So let's get the day 9 folder created first. And I would like to get the whole setup done. I'd like to clone the repository from GitHub. And also, I would like to get the text file copied in here. And let me first clone the GitHub repo. I'd also have to get all the dependencies installed. So Yarn would just install everything. And I would also like to let you know what we are going for in today's session. So in today's session, we already have, up till now, we have already completed these basic routing related things, and the routing setup as well has been done. Now we'd actually like to move forward with routing. And here we are focusing on getting the authentication done as far as routing is concerned. So there are certain React related concepts and Redux related concepts that we'd be learning today. Plus there is Redux-Saga that will come into the picture, and routing as well. So there is sort of a revision that is happening in this particular session of all the other sessions that we had previously. So meanwhile, I'd also like to add certain features in our project. So the features that I want to add is a global alert component. Now this global alert component would be responsible for showing any alert messages with a failure or a success globally. So this includes everything like task added, task deleted, user logged in, invalid user, or any kind of a global alert that we want to show. So now this is a global alert message, which means it will be a separate component itself in its own, and it has to be communicated the alert messages from different other components. So Redux would come into the picture in this particular global alert component. We'll see how that would go into, and it would have its own actions and reducers and all. All right, and then once this global alert is done, we'd like to set up the flow of login to task manager to log out and back to login. So log out and login, this kind of a thing. So if this kind of a flow has to be set up, we would need certain validations as in the form of certain services like valid username and password kind of a thing. So we would have the service creation done here again for the user. And this user service would give us the validity of the username and password credentials. Now the thing is, JSON server, the one that we have currently running, it is not capable on its own to get the validation done for the username and password validation credentials. So what I would do at this point is I would just get the service, like a dummy validation created in the service, but then I would like you to get that validation done with some actual proper backend programming language. So that is something that I'll leave it up to you. But on the front end, there'll be not much that will be changing as far as the programming is concerned. You'd see that we'd be creating dummy promises, and also it'll feel like you're actually accessing an actual server, but in reality you're not. All right, so that I would leave it up to you. So this is the user's flow that we want to get done, and this would make use of services, React, Redux, Redux-Saga, everything. All right, so once user's flow is done, we'd also like to go for authentication. All right, so in this authentication, we would like to go for a set of components called higher order components. So we would be creating routing components. So authenticated routes would be created. All right, these would be higher order components that we'll be creating, and we'll see how we create higher order components, what they are, etc. So once this whole thing is done, we would have enough sort of a capability to get the entire users flow created, and the entire project would be done that way. And then from the next session, we might be able to focus on some other aspects, like I'm planning for GraphQL to be also covered in this particular series of sessions that we have. So this whole this three of the features would just get the whole project completed, and then I would leave it up to you to expand this project or extend this with certain other functionalities if you would like to. All right. So as far as the agenda is concerned, I believe everyone is clear on today's agenda. Yes. All right. Very good. And let me start the project in my editor. And also, let me start the React.js server as well. I would also like to start the JSON server, which is inside this project. With the port 3001. This gives you tasks and tasks as a resource. That's it. All right. So that will be started, and we have our browser. All right. Okay. So here we have it. The folder structure looks pretty okay. I mean, manageable, good for all the projects as such, but there could be better folder structures as well, to be frank. What about DB connectivity? How does it work in React? So Ketan, you see this JSON server that we started? It is actually an API server. Now, React is not something that is capable to connect to a database directly. It requires an API integration. The API integration portion is already done. So it is now on the backend programmer that we'd have to rely on for the database connectivity. So database connectivity always have to be done on the backend and not on the front end. So for that, maybe some backend related sessions are to be expected, but this is purely front end. So we're not focusing on DB connectivity at all this time. We would go for a Node.js setup, and that would give you an idea on how Node.js servers can be created. But in that backend server that we create, we're just going to focus on GraphQL. So there also we'll not be going for any database connectivity, but that will open up an avenue where you can try and get the database connectivity done on Node.js. So basically DB connectivity has to be done on the backend. All right, Ketan. And as you know, we have this earlier sessions or earlier Node.js trainings that we had at Elegant, where I have shared all the videos of Node.js database connectivity and all. You can get it from any one of the participants. Probably some would have it. So you can check out the DB connectivity in there, but it is more or less Node.js. All right. Okay, so we do have this login, and as of now, this does nothing, I guess. And I can go to tasks freely, and that will give me the data from the server. I get to task detail as well. All right, and this whole thing works. Okay, so this is again sending requests to the network. All right, if I go for an inspect element in the network, you see that there are requests going on onto the server and back. All right, so these are certain things that are already set, that we set in previous sessions. Now we are going to just make it work with login and registration and all, and we are expecting this to change to logout as well. So that is also something that we would like to achieve. All right, so now first of all, I would like to have that global alert component created and display, where it could if I, for example, add a task, then it should say the task added successfully, rather than just adding the task over here. Plus, if I delete a task, the same message should come, the task deleted successfully. All right, so in that case, we'd first have to create a component. All right, so let's create a component. And where do you think the component should be created folder wise? Any ideas, any suggestions, anyone? Shared, very good, Rita. Shared, very good, Shubham. So we would create that inside shared. All right, and I'll create an alert.jsx, and I'd go for importing React, and I just want it to be a functional component. All right, and the functional component would have the alert imported from React-Strap as well. That way you'd show some alert there. You can see that I'm just overriding the traditional React-Strap alert with my alert component, and that's why I'm just naming it that way. But it would not actually affect anything else. We can just import the alert from alert.jsx, and React-Strap can be left alone later. All right, so so here I would have to go for alert from React-Strap though, because that's what I want to show. And then I'd create alert. I'll pass in some props. That is something which is mandatory. Mandatory in the sense like we would always take in props, customary, and we'd return an alert and says, as of now, test alert message. So this alert component, I create a constant alert and alert test message or test alert message, and then export default alert. All right. And I can also go give a color for alert. So color could be, say, success. That may give you the green color. So it is all Bootstrap related, again, coming in from React-Strap. So this alert component, a very simple one. And I would like to first display it somewhere, but I believe this alert is pretty clear to all. Very good. I'd go into the header, and inside the header, I might want to go for below the HR. I would like to have the alert component imported. That's the common place that I want to show it. So I'll just import alert from alert slash. Oh, I might have to go one level above. All right, and I display the alert component in here like so. So there's a problem here. This alert and this alert are conflicting. So I can just name this one differently. I'll just name it global alert. All right, like so. And I can just show it right away like this, and it would show me something like this on a bigger screen. You can reduce the height you can reduce the width of the alert if you want to. But you see here that I've exported it as global alert. Still in the header, I'm importing it as alert. Now that is possible because import export has another variation, like export default. Whenever you do, or whatever you do with whichever identifier you want to have, you can import it with another name of the identifier altogether, and that will still not be a problem. All right, so you can see that I'm going for an export default global alert, but I'm importing alert from alert.jsx, and that is still fine. All right, in normal exports where you're not doing an export default, you'd have to go for the exact name of the component, while export default, you can name it anything else while you import as well. All right, so that has to be clear to everyone. And alert has been displayed, and you can change the color and all. So what I want is that I want certain thing where, let's say if I have text is equal to testing, and color is equal to, let's say, danger. All right, so I want to go for the text and color to be displayed inside of the alert. All right, I might have declared them. So let something like this I want to do. All right, so this is the color and this is the text. All right, so you can see that this is what I want to achieve. But the only thing is, like, when this variable change, I want the alert to be re-rendered. All right, so what do you think of these variables? Where should they be put in? And also, what do you think of this functional component? When I want, what I want is the render should be done again when these variables change. So Jinesh says we can go for the state. Yes, state of a component. And what about this functional component, Jinesh? Okay, as an input or a property of this alert component, all right. And if, for example, we go for the state, like Jinesh mentioned, what do you think about the functional component? What should happen to the functional component created? Should it stay functional? Need to make it a class component. Very good. So yes, so that is one solution. We can have it inside the state, make it a class component. And Parth also suggested that we can have a property inside this alert component, can do that as well. Now, the thing is that all the other components like this form, the list, item, all the other components would like to send their own alert messages to this alert component. So if that component communication has to happen, I have to go for this global alert component to be something that is taking the data from the Redux store. All right. So when there is a Redux store integration done over here, then I would not have to convert this to anything. All right. You can just make it a functional component and still get the data from the Redux store. And the only thing is I can just, dispatch actions from these actions like delete and add actions. And those actions can be observed in here with this appropriate state variable. And then the appropriate data can be displayed in here, the color and the text and all. All right. So the text and color, I don't want it to be so I'll just keep it const, but I don't want it to be coming in from the state of the class component or maybe as a prop from a parent component, but I want it from the global Redux store so that all the other components can contribute to what the text or the color of this component would be. All right. So I believe everyone agrees that that is something that is viable for us. The reason for it is we want to get every component involved for the alert kind of a thing. Yes, everyone. Okay, so as of now, I'll just keep them static. But what I would like to do is I would like to get the actions created first. And then after the actions are done, I'd go into the reducer and I would work something up with the root reducer as well. So I'll start with config and I'd go with the action types. And as of now, what I think is there are two actions that I'm thinking of right now as far as alert is concerned, which one is export const set alert. All right. And one is reset alert. All right, two actions. One, we would be setting the alert, and of course at some point we'd like to get rid of that alert, so we'd be resetting the alert. So these two action types. So again, you might have been wondering, like, why am I not going for these something to be done and something is done kind of an approach? So this approach is mainly related to asynchronous kind of actions, like the ones that are dealing with Redux-Saga. Alert and set alert, they're not asynchronous. So there's no database or there's nothing asynchronous about this. And I'm not considering any API calls in here as well. So this format is pretty synchronous that we want to go for. All right. So that is why this simple way of going for it. Again, if you go with the user, for example, in a while, you would see that user login and register and all, that will be asynchronous. So we'll come back to this sorts of action names when that user related integration happens. All right, so these are the action types. I would create one action, we'll call it alert action, alert actions.js, and I would import both the action types. All right, and what I would do is export const set alert action, and in the set alert action, I definitely need the text and the color. So I'll say message. I'm expecting to have, message.text and message.color. All right. I'm expecting that sort of a thing. And I would return types dot set alert and message as the payload, right? Then we'll go to the reducer to get this payload, and then there is a reset alert. And as I already probably have said, these two, set alert and reset alert, it's just that I'm thinking of these actions to be having these names, but you can implement different things as such. This is just logical. There's no rule that we should go for these exact actions for alerts. All right. So all I think is it should be set alert and reset alert, and everything else would be taken care of by this message variable. And that's it. All right. So two action types, set alert and reset alert. And we'll now move on to the reducer. So I would go for another new file, call it alert reducer. And the alert reducer would again take in all the action types first of all, or maybe only two at this point, set alert. Actually, I would have also taken two action types only in case of the alert actions. All right, because these are the two that is required, and that's it. So from config action types, and I would go for a const alert reducer. I have to export it as well, which will take in state or two arguments, state and action. All right, so if we talk about initial state, what I think is initial state should be text blank and color blank. All right, that could be the initial state of the alert itself. So I would keep that in here, initial state. And I would go for a switch case. Only when the action type is either set alert or reset alert should we be going into this whole alert reducer. So case set alert. If it is a set alert, I'll just return action.message. Action.message has those two properties, text and color. And the case reset alert. If it is a reset alert, what do you think I should return in here? Anyone, any ideas? Initial state. Very good, Jinesh. I return an initial state. That's the good thing about initial state declaration. You don't have to repeat yourselves. And default, of course, as always, return state. All right. So this action.message, because message is the payload when the type of the action is set alert. All right. Reset alert doesn't have any payload. We can just return the initial state, which is this one. So I believe this alert reducer that I have created, this is clear to all. Yes. Very good. Very good, guys. And we'll go into the root reducer. We'll import the alert reducer. For now, I'll get rid of user. We don't actually need user for a while, so I'll just get rid of that. User would come, by the way. So import alert reducer from alert reducer, and I'll say alert is equal to alert reducer. All right, and we're exporting the root reducer by default. All right, so that happens, and now we have the state available with us. So let's see if I can get the state or the store displayed somehow. Go into the index. Yep. Here I can go for store.getState, and the store.getState would now have tasks. It's a blank array. That is, here the tasks was blank array, and then it got populated later on. And alert, importantly, text blank and color blank. All right. So this is what it is. So now we have our store ready, and we'd like to go back to the alert component so that we can do something with the store. So let me just go to the components, shared alert. So here I want to access the global store. So first, if we want to do that, what should we be importing? Anyone? Connect. Very good, Rita. Connect from React Redux. And I would connect indeed the global alert here. I'll still stick with map state to props and map dispatch to props. So this is the state, and it'll return alert. All right. And the alert would be state.alert that we'll be taking in. And I would go for map state to props here. And instead of this, I can go with something like const text and color is equal to props dot alert. All right. Text and color should be props dot alert. And you can see that the alert is gone. Though the thing is, like, it's because of this no color there and there's no text as well. That's why the alert is gone. So if I just do an inspect element, the alert itself would be there. All right. You can see that the div class alert and all. So that is all there. All right. So, so it's just that the text is gone and the color is gone. So we would like to just manage it better. We don't want that extra div lurking around if we don't have any text at all. So what I can do here is, if text is blank, then what we can go for is return just a React fragment, and that'll be okay. All right. So if there's no text, don't want to return anything. And you can see now that the div is gone, that extra div, the space has gone in here. Only if there is some text. So if I go into the alert reducer, maybe go for some like test and color to be info or warning. All these are Bootstrap colors, by the way. You can see that you get this kind of a thing. I change this to success. You get a green alert. So now this whole alert is coming in from the state of the component, or state of the Redux, I'm sorry, not the component. So this is our alert component that we have with map state to props. All right. So this being done, now we would like to get the alert shown while, deleting or adding. So now I would like to know that at what place. Now this is all based on what we did previously. At what particular place or at what particular file would we be knowing whether the task is added successfully or whether the task is deleted successfully? There are so many areas where we can try the things out, but can anyone tell me exactly where would we be knowing if the task is added to the API successfully or not, or even deleted? Janesh says service. All right. Yes, that's correct. Here I can get a good idea on whether the task is added or deleted. That's absolutely right. The only problem with the service is, in the service, we're not capable of dispatching the actions. All right. So that way we'll not be able to dispatch the alert action. But service is a very good place. We'll get the exact information on that. So service, we see that it's not possible because there's no dispatch available here. So now where is the next place where we can go to? Rita says Saga, and that's actually correct, because here I get the idea where if the task is added or not, and also I can go for the dispatch of the action through the put effect, right? I believe everyone agrees with Rita on this, and Janesh, you also get it, why Saga would be my preference and not the service. All right. Very good. Very good. So I have this service imported, like task service imported. I'll go for the alert service import as well. So import star as alert from services alert service. Oh, actually, I don't have to import the service, but I think I should import the actions. Import star as alert from. There's no service called an alert service, though we can have a service if we want to, but that is totally repetitive. So I'm not interested in a service at all. Just go for the action so that we can do the action dispatch. All right. So here, let's say what we are targeting is the add task and delete task. So I would give the success and failure in here. So let's say, for example, yield, I can go for a put alert dot set alert action. And inside the set alert action, we expect a message with text task added. and color success. All right. If the task is not added, I can go for a yield put text task not added or something like that, or task adding add task failed or something like that, and the color would be danger. All right. So here we are not now merely not doing a console log of error, but we are actually going for some alert display globally. And here I can also do the same thing. And this yield put can be, separately created as a generator as well if you want to. Here I can go for task deleted. All right. And here task deletion failed or task not deleted or something like that. All right, something like this can be done. So I'm just keeping it simple. I'm just keeping a put in here. And now let's see if this action dispatch after the delete action is done, or even after the add task action is done, if this is something that is fired or not. So I'll go for test. And there you go. Task added right away shown inside the alert component, more or less because alert is mapped to the state of the current Redux store. Right. Similarly, if I now you see that this alert is not going away. So that is also something that I would like to take care of. But if I go for refresh, it would just reset everything. And if I go for delete, you can see that the task deleted message also comes in. But every time I'll have to refresh to get this alert out of the way. All right. So I believe these action dispatches that I have done, I believe these are clear to all. The alert related action dispatches in the Redux-Saga. Again, this is not asynchronous, remember. This is not calling any API or anything like that. It's just dispatching an action and that's it. So I would like to just confirm from all that everyone is clear. So Rita asks, can we make a toaster in Bootstrap? I think so. Bootstrap. I think Bootstrap doesn't provide it, but there could be some libraries that would work with Bootstrap, and that can be done. So, so I don't think Bootstrap would provide a toaster to us. Like, oh, there is toasts. Yeah, but this is a different thing, I guess. There is a transition and also show toast. This is a toast and probably not a toast. We don't want this, but I can go for that whole disappearing of an alert, what Rita is asking about, which is something that I would do inside the alert component itself. So this would also give you an idea on the Redux portion or the Redux aspect as well. So all we have to do is after some time, we want this to be disappeared essentially. All right. So what I think of is, let's say after 3 seconds or something, set timeout. After 3 seconds, I might want to just dispatch an action. What action should I dispatch after 3 seconds? We have already created one. Reset alert. Very good. Shubham and Janesh. I can go for a dispatch of the reset alert action, but then I'd have to go for a map dispatch to props. Let's do one more thing, I guess. Props.dispatch. If I do, like say type, text blank color blank. Let me see if this is something which is possible. Actions may not have, it should be type. I'm just trying reset alert. All right. Because this is also one way that we can go for. So, yep. And after 3 seconds, that should go automatically. Yeah, so this is also one thing. Map dispatcher props is something that we have already learned. Like that is, map dispatcher props is the only thing that would help us around in this case. But the thing is, if I go for connect, all right, and even if I don't do a map dispatch to props, map dispatch to props was something that was used by most of the developers in the past, and it has stuck that way. But if I just do connect, and if I do a console.log of props, you would see a props.dispatch available. Let me just show you the inspect element for the alert. Yep, you see alert.js x line number 9. You have the alert, that is the state, plus you have the dispatch function as well. So when you go for a map dispatch to props, or even if you don't go for a map dispatch to props, just when you do the connect with the Redux store, dispatch would already be there. Now, map dispatch to props was something that was already used by so many developers, and that's why it has stuck there, and people use map dispatch to props. But even if you don't go for map dispatch to props, there is always a dispatch available which you can right away go for dispatching an action. So that can be done. All right. So I would use that approach in this particular case. I'll do a props.dispatch after a set timeout, and I would import that action. So import reset alert action. The only thing is that it doesn't give us that programming flexibility, but for now it's not required, so that's fine. Alert action, and here I can go for a set timeout and props.dispatch reset alert action after 3 seconds. So this whole hiding of the component is still taken care of inside the alert component itself. So if I delete, it would show me task deleted, and after 3 seconds it'll just fade away. All right, so I think this is clear. And regarding a toaster, you can create it, but I mean, I'm not sure React-Strap provides that particular kind of a thing. All right, so I believe this is clear to all. Okay, very good. What about other participants? Okay, so this being done, now we are ready with the alert component mapped to that state. So now each and every component is capable of giving an alert while the whole alert component displays globally for every component there is. So now we'd like to go for the flow: login, tasks, logout, and login again. Authentication, or authentication, I would take care of inside this flow itself, but authenticated routes, it's a different topic, so we'd cover it differently apart from this flow. So first we'll just like to get the flow ready, so that once you're in the login, you can enter some valid username and password. If it is invalid, it will show that global alert again, that invalid username, password or something. And if it is valid, it would redirect you to the task manager component. All right, so for now, I would not go with Redux, but technically I should go with Redux and Redux-Saga, because I want the user inside the Redux store, and that's the only way I'd go for the authenticated routes. All right, but for now, I'll just try to go through this through a service. All right, and that would make you understand something about the browser router regarding redirection. All right, so first we'll just create a service, which is again necessary when it comes to Redux-Saga as well. But first we'll just try without Redux and Redux-Saga. That is just get the flow ready. All right, and I would actually make it separate. So users flow, and then users state in Redux store. All right, so the flow first, and then adding the user state in the Redux store, and after the user state is added, then we would be capable of going for authentication as well. All right, so first I'm just focusing on the flow of login, task manager, and logout. All right, so I would create a service, user service.js. And if we talk about user service, and if we talk about the whole interface that we have currently, what do you think the user service would contain as methods as per our functionality? Check user, login, okay, logout, okay. Yeah, these three seem fine. I would like to go for login. Login would have credentials. Logout will have nothing. as an argument, and check user. Check user would give you the current user. That's the aim. All right. I'd export them. So credentials, what I'm expecting is username and password. And if you check out our login form, you see that the data that we have, it has the username and password. And we are actually logging that this.state.data in here. So here is where I would like to get the login done essentially. All right, so for now, this user service login is what I'm focusing on. Logout, we can call this logout method, but this would not do anything. And check user also right now, it doesn't do anything because we don't have any user stored or anything like that. But these would be the methods. Now, login usually should make an API call, like something like a return axios.post login URL plus creds, something like this. But if I do this right now, it will not do anything because JSON server doesn't have that kind of a post related functionality. So for now, I'll just return a new promise, all right, which will have a resolve and reject. And oops, resolve reject should be in brackets. And it'll just check like const username password from creds. All right, and we would check if statically if username is admin and password is admin. So here I'm doing a static check, but you know now that we should have returned axios.post promise, but our API is simply not capable of doing that. So we are just making the React components feel that it is coming in from an API, and that's it. All right, so when this is the case, I would resolve, and I'd resolve with a user. So const user can be an object where we'll get, say, username, for example, which is the username, and token. And I'll go for a dummy token. All right, but the token would again come from the server. So I'm resolving with the user. So you can assume that if axios.post is something that is written on a server, the server would give us some details on the user plus a JWT or something like that, that kind of a token created. All right, and I'm resolving. Else, I'll just reject with a message invalid credentials. All right, invalid credentials or something like that. So here, as I said, I'm just creating a field that this login would actually be calling an API and all. But right now, we're just doing a static check at the service level. The rest of the things would still stay the same. So if you have an API later down the line, which does your axios.post login, at that point, you can just go for axios.post and you can get rid of this particular static promise that is there. All right. Logout and check user, I'm not going into that yet, but I believe this login service is all clear to all. Okay. Very good. Other participants as well, please let me know. Okay. So remember, eventually we want to have the user inside the state of the component, or sorry, inside the state of the whole application that is inside Redux. So eventually I would call this login method from my Redux-Saga. But as of now, I just want the flow to be done. So I would just call it inside the login form. But later, definitely I want to call it inside the Redux-Saga altogether. So for now, I would just go with importing star as service or user service, or I can just go for like login only because I just want that login from services user service. All right, and here, once there are no errors, line number 32, instead of displaying the data in the console, what I can do in here is like const data is equal to this dot state, and that data basically is credentials. So I can go for some like login data, that is the credentials, and login is a promise. So dot then and dot catch can be done. Here I can do dispatching and all. I would not I'll just not go for the catch for now, or maybe I can go for the catch, but I do not dispatch an action, but that will be done on the Redux-Saga. What I can do here is I can go for the user, all right, and I can go for an error. Okay, so user and error that we are getting based on the resolve and reject that happens on the promise. I'll just do a console log to start with. Console log user and console log error. So basically, if I enter valid username and password, in this case, it is admin. At that point, I should get a user, else I should get the error invalid credentials. Let me just do an inspect element. Let's see if that works. All right. So if I go for some other things, I get an invalid credentials, and that is the catch block that is working up. And if I go for something valid, I'd get the valid username and the token object that I want. All right. So this login usage is pretty straightforward. And obviously it is here that I would like to redirect to task manager, right? Here is what I would like to do, redirect to the task manager. So I believe this login is clear to all, right? And this is still temporary. This would get changed to Redux-Saga dispatch kind of a thing. All right. So here I would like to redirect to task manager. And if I go into my app component, you should see that login, it's a route component. So when it is a route component, we get those extra properties that we can play around as far as routing is concerned. One of the properties is props.history. So it is actually this .props.history. And history, it's sort of a stack of all the pages that you are in. So I can push pages to that particular stack, and the top level page is shown to us. So that is the whole thing. So history.push can be done, and I can push tasks route there. So when I push a tasks route inside the history, I think history has to be just an object and not a function. So when I push that task route inside the history, this tasks URL or the task manager component, this route gets on top of your stack of the routes, and it is just something that will be displayed in the UI as well. So the thing is, if I just enter something random, it'll give me invalid credentials still. But what I do is if I go for admin, hit enter, you can see that it gives you this login.jsx, and then it does a this .props.history.push. History is coming from the route, and shows you the task manager over here. All right. So this is one way of redirection, and this history is just because the component that we have, that is the login component, it is a routing component. If it would have been a normal component like header, this would not have happened. All right. This .props.history. We use this kind of a routing related properties in some other component as well. Can anyone recall and tell me? Not history, but it was this .props.match kind of a thing. Can anyone tell me which component do we use that? Or for what did we use? I don't know. Task manager, we didn't do anything about the props or anything like that. We had one functionality where we had to take in the URL parameter, getting ID for delete, not getting ID for delete. It was task detail. Task detail. All right. I believe everyone recalls. And again, task detail, going back to the app.js, it was a routing level component, and that's the only reason why we were able to get the ID from this .props.match.params. All right. So similarly, login gets this .props.history, and .push helps you programmatically redirect. All right. So this being done, I'd also like to have a logout button, and for now, I would not be able to basically show and hide or anything like that. I can just go into the nav and just show the logout button. That's it. All right. So let me do some more addition to this. What I realized is that if I maximize my, or if I maximize my screen, the full width just shows login and register like this. I would like to have that to the left. Right. So I'll just keep the register in here, and I'll go for a float right. Oh, sorry, I wanted it to the right and not the left. All right. So float right, float right. So we'll basically add a float to this, and this should show this whole login register floated towards right. And because it is a float right, I just changed the order of the register and login as well. And towards the end, I would also like to show the logout button, and that would not be a nav link, but that will be a button. All right, and the button would be logout. And the reason is, like, I want to go for a handle logout kind of a scenario over here. So let me just take that button from React-Strap. So I don't want to just redirect, but I want to get the handle logout done. So what I can do is, or for now, maybe let's just have a link or a nav link. Later, I would like to get the handle logout done. So as of now, we'll just get the nav link. All right. And that'll take us to home. And we'll also have some color names added in here. Just gets the flow right. Okay. So we have this logout, slightly a bigger button. I like to have it a bit smaller. All right. So if I hit logout, you can see that it takes us to the login page again. And if I go for some valid username password, it takes you to the task manager. I can go in anywhere and I can hit logout. It'll take you to the login. So this is the flow that I want, but this in any way doesn't guarantee that your routes are authenticated. I can still go to the tasks right away. Moreover, I would like to show and hide these links when the user is logged in successfully. That is also something that I would like to do. At that point, this nav link also would be a button later on where we'd like to go for an on click for handling of logout type of a functionality. All right. So as of now, we'll just keep it this way. It looks a bit odd, but that's fine. We can live with it. Eventually, there will be only one section of these two that would be displayed. All right. I think I can add some classes here just to make it a bit smaller. All right. Okay. So I think this is clear. This whole flow that we are trying to go for, login and log out and all, the whole flow is clear, right? Yes, it shows right to left because it is the float right property that is coming on, and that's why it is floating towards right, Shubham. So float means the first one goes to the last, so it's the float right that is acting up. So I believe this flow is clear to all. Everyone, please confirm. All right, very good. And now I would like to add this user state to the Redux store. And for that exact reason, I would like to use Redux-Saga in here. And hence, this would go. All right, this would get done inside Redux-Saga. Here, there will be just an action dispatch. So I'll just get rid of this login. I just wanted to have the flow done, and that's why I just put it there. And navigation, instead of a nav link, I'll just have a button because I want this button to have a handler of its own. So button from React-Strap, and let me just go for button. You can have this two classes put in here. All right, and I want to click handler, and the handle logout function might be declared here. I'm just prepping myself so that we can have some user inside this particular class that is there. Button can have a color of danger. All right. So this will not do anything now. It will not do anything at all for now, but later we'll see what can be done in here. So this is my nav, and this is my login. Here I would like to dispatch an action. All right. Instead of just calling the login service, I would like to dispatch an action. That action would be listened to by Redux-Saga, and Redux-Saga would call the login service. And Redux-Saga would decide whether to show an alert like user logged in successfully or invalid credentials or anything like that. All right. So this is just a prep so that we can get something done with Redux. And before even Redux-Saga, we'd go for Redux altogether. So if we talk about the action types, now we come back to a point where everything would be asynchronous. We'd be calling services and all, and then we'd have to go for, I say, 4 actions that would basically enable the user login and log out. So can anyone tell me what action types should we be putting in as far as the action type.js file is concerned? And remember here, Redux-Saga is to be considered because everything would be asynchronous. We are calling APIs kind of a thing. So anyone, any ideas? What are the action types for user login and the logout process? And by the way, that could be based on these action types because those are also asynchronous. Login user logged in. Very good, Rita. It could be one of the set could be this login user, and then user logged in. All right. So that could be one. And what is the other set of actions that we may want to have? Anyone, any ideas? Logout user, and logout user also is to be asynchronous, by the way, and the user logged out. Very good. So export const logout. So there are so many people who have answered it. Very good. Logout user and user logged out. So again, just to keep things clear, what out of these 4 actions, what are the 2 actions that would be listened to by Redux-Saga, and what 2 actions would be listened to by Redux? Okay, login user and logout user. Very good, Rita. Those would be listened to by Redux-Saga, and of course user logged in and user logged out, that we listen to by Redux. So again, we go into the actions. We create a set of actions. We'll call it user actions. People call this auth action as well, and that would also be there. But before creating those actions, I believe everyone is clear that login user and logout user, these are the actions that will be listened to by Redux-Saga, and user logged in and user logged out, they would be listened to by the reducer, having 2 separate cases. Yes, everyone? Very good. What about other participants? I'd just like to have a confirmation from all. All right. So here I'll go with 4 actions. Login user action, and login user action would have credentials. That credentials would come in from the login form. What I'm expecting again is credentials to be username and password, and we can go for a return types dot login user, and credential is the payload, and export const user logged in. Now this user logged in, it's something that will be dispatched by Redux-Saga, which would have a user already available, all right, and will return a type user logged in with the user as a payload, all right. And we'll go for export const logout user and user logged out. That would not have any payload at this point, but if you want to make that dynamic or maybe log something onto the server, payloads can be included. As this at this point we don't have anything to do with payload or anything like that, so user, it'll be very simple this time, or logout user action, nothing to pass, just the action type, and user logged out action, all right, user logged out. So these are the 4 actions or action generators that we are talking about, and this user is basically the one that has the username and token that is coming in from Redux-Saga. Now that we have Redux-Saga involved in calling the login service, we also have username and token. Nothing actually that we should worry about. It's just a reducer that would be handling it. Anyway, so action is done, and I believe everyone is clear on these 4 action generators that I've created. Yes? All right. Very good. And now we go to the reducers, and there comes the user reducer that we were waiting for. User reducer, we would have 2 actions here, as we decided, user logged in and user logged out from config/action types, and I'd export user reducer. Oops. Would be having state and action. And if we talk about the initial state, what I think of the initial state right now is it should be null. So initially there's no user, could be null or a blank object, but null will help us to go for some if conditions and all really easily. So it should be null this time around, and I would just keep this to be initial state. And here I'd go for switch action.type case user logged in, and when the type is user logged in, it would have action.user, and the case when the type is user logged out, it will not have any payload, but I can return the initial state. All right, and default we can go with returning state, right? Whatever the state is will persist. Okay, so this is a very simple user reducer. It starts with null as the initial state where the user would not be there, and then we would just go on and add the user when the user logged in successfully. All right, so I believe this reducer is also clear to all. Yes, everyone? Very good. Okay, now we go to the root reducer and the usual. Now remember, this is all something that we are organizing our code like this. I mean, it's very important for organizational purposes, but or organizing purposes, but we might want to also it is also possible technically to put this whole thing in one file and everything would just work. All right, but we are just separating the concerns. So user is whatever the user reducer returns. Okay. And now if I go back to my index where I have imported my store, and let me just do an inspect element, the store now would have an additional user variable. So let me just go for a console.log store.getState, and there you go. Tasks is a blank array, alert is the initial state, and user is null, whatever the user reducer returns as usual. And we want to make the use of the store to start with in the display that is showing and hiding of these menu items. So which is the component that we should go into so that we can get this log out and login shown and hidden based on the user now that the user is inside the store? Rita says header component. Is it the header component? Header doesn't actually have much of anything to do with the showing and hiding of the menu items specifically. So nav component, right? It's the nav component. So nav component has all those button and nav link and all, and there we can show and hide things, right? So I believe Shubham and Shweta, you're also clear that it should be the nav component. Yes, everyone? And what should we do to the nav component, by the way, if I import, let's say, connect from React Redux? Now, what should I do in this particular nav component? Should be map state to props, or should it be map dispatch to props? Map state to props. Very good. I believe everyone would agree with Rita on this. Map state to props is the one that we would like to go for. It'll give me the state, and I can return user to be state.user. All right, can do a connect. Map state to props. I can also destructure user right away. So, I can do something like this, where this gives me just the user from the state right away as an argument. And I can go for user to be user like this. And that can also work, by the way. Let me just show you that in here. I'm just doing a console log of props. So you can see nav.jsx line number 8, you're getting a user that is null, and that is all because of this. So this also can be done where we can remove one of the two keys. Again, ES6 will still get user null. All right, that is something that would happen. Plus, we can also do something like this, because we are using a fat arrow function. There's only one return. We can do something like this as well. That will also work the same way. Just making the syntax more and more compact as I move forward. So this is the most compact way that we can go for as far as this whole map state to props is concerned. If I want to just go for an ES5 approach, it will be something like, it will be something like a function map state to props, where state is there, and we return user is state.user. All right. So this map state to props function, we've just made it this way. So both these would work, by the way. And both of these would work. Right. So a very shorthand kind of a syntax. I believe everyone is clear that these two are the same. Yes, everyone. Okay, so we get the user in here. User is null, and based on the user, we can return one thing or the other. So what I can do is, I can go for a conditional render, where I show either a nav with these two or a nav with this button. But I would like to go for one more approach that helps you to, get a better output, or get a very compact output that way. So that would also clear up one more way to show and hide components. So what I can do is, first of all, I just want to show the logout button when the user is there inside the state. All right. And at that point, I'd not like to show the register and login button. So what I can do is I can first do something like this. I can go for this to be inside an interpolated syntax. And I would like to show this button only if, and let me just put it in one line. All right, and let me just expand this for a while. So this is an interpolation. Actually, this doesn't make any difference at all. This is one and the same. I'm interpolating the button and it will still show me the logout button in here. But when do I want to show the logout button is that when the props.user is there. So I can get the user from the props. I can do a destructuring syntax in here. So const user is equal to props. All right. So when there is a user, that is user, and then and only then I'll show the logout button. So what this results in is that logout button is hidden. All right. Now this is a normal logical AND operator, but can anyone explain me that how did this happen? How did it hide the logout button? And by the way, if the user is there, so say for example in the user reducer, if I have some initial state to be true or something, all right, at that point you would see that the logout button comes back. All right, so if I have this to be null or false, at that point the logout button would go. So can anyone explain this, what I've done? How did this logical AND operator work in our favor, where it shows and hides the logout button based on whether the user is null or not null? Very good. So Palak has the correct answer. It goes further only if the first condition matches. So logical AND works in such a way where, like, first of all, AND means both the conditions to be true. And now the logical AND operators have been smarter in all the programming languages, where only if the first condition is true, would it go to check the next condition. That means execute this expression. So only if user is truthy, then and only then it would execute this, and hence we'd get the button. Otherwise we would not. All right. So this is just the logical AND, but we are just exploiting the use of the AND operator in here, which is good. It makes you have a shorter syntax. All right. So I believe everyone is clear on this syntax. Yes, everyone. All right. And we can do the same here as well. So it would be like a bit longer. So it'll be like if not user and we can go for a React fragment. That would give us this combination. All right. And what I think is it's better that we put the whole thing inside round brackets. All right, something like that. So if not user and this, make it a bit better looking. All right, so this is also a way that you can show hide kind of a thing, like a conditional render sort of a thing can be done. So you can see that now the login and register, then they're not showing anything. So let's just try and maybe add something to the user. Let's say true, for example. If this is the case, then you can see that only the logout button now shows. And if it is null or false, login and register would now show. All right, so these are the things that we went for as far as user is concerned. So this should be clear. And now what we want is we want the user to actually log in. We want to get that state set up. So this time around, first of all, we'd like to start with okay, so first of all, we'd like to start with the login component. All right, and now I want to dispatch a login action. This action would be listened by Saga. We have not created any user Saga or anything like that yet, but we would create it in short time. So this has to be listened to by the Redux-Saga, the Saga middleware itself, but we would dispatch the login action. We have the login action available inside the user action, which is this one that we are trying to dispatch, login user action. All right, so we'll go into the login form component, and we would first get the connect going. We don't need this import login service, don't need that. And I think the data is something that we would require in a while. So import connect from React Redux, and right below I'd go for, of course, now everyone would know that it is map dispatch to props, and dispatch would return us login as a method. Okay, this method would take in credentials, and we can dispatch the login user action. This will be auto imported. We'll pass in the credentials in here, and I'll do a map state to props connect or map dispatch to props like this, where and go for null map dispatch to props and login. All right, so this happens, and login user action, by the way, it is automatically imported right at the top over here. And in this line number 35 or 34 or 35, whatever, we would like to go for login. So this dot props dot login and data. The data is essentially username and password, that is the credentials. So this dot props dot login would be dispatched in here in the login user action. All right, and the login user action, I want it to be listened to by a Redux-Saga. So I'd like to get the Saga created. All right, before creating the Saga, I believe whatever I have done in the login, I believe everyone is clear with it, right? Okay. All right, so inside this user Saga, I would like to go for all the types of effects, and also I would like to import take every, call, put all, and that'll be from Redux-Saga effects. And I would also like to import the usual, like the action types. I would like to import service, will be user service. Oops. And I would like to import the actions, user actions, and also alert actions, because I do want to show that user logged in or invalid credentials and so on. So it's alert actions. All right, and we would like to go for a watcher and a worker. So what would I name my watcher? Watch login action, right? Something like that. So function watch login action, that would yield take every types dot. Okay, so these are the types that we want. And what do you think? Which action should we be watching here? Login user. Very good. So I think I can name it watch login user. And when we have that, we'd go for login the worker itself, and I'll create a worker. And this would get the credentials, because if you think about the login action itself, user action, login action, it has the payload as credentials. I'm taking that payload right here in the worker. Inside the action would be there passed inside the worker by default. So here I yield call. I do have service dot login with the credentials. All right. Oh, I actually would not be passing them right here, but I'd be passing them as the next argument to the call. So that is how we always go for the call method. First argument is the function you want to call. Next argument is the function or functions arguments, basically. And this will give me a user. And this will either give me a user or it will fail. So I would go for try catch. Right. And let me just go for a console log of E because I want to use this catch message directly. So for now, I'll just go for a yield put, and I'll take that alert from the task saga itself. All right. And I'll say that, something went wrong, a generic message. Then I would like to replace it with whatever the message is over here. All right. So I'll call the user, and once the user is available, I would go for yield put actions dot actions dot actions dot log user logged in, and we get the user in, and we also yield put. Actually, I can take that same thing from the task saga. Now that also tells you that this can be a very different set of functions that will still work. And we can say user logged in. All right, something like this. So I'm calling the login service. I'm going for user logged in action, and I'm then yielding this particular alert action. And if the user is not valid, then this whole thing would happen. All right. So if the user is not valid, what I can, oh, there's one thing that is still remaining. We've not linked it with Redux-Saga, so we'll do that. All right. So let's go for a function user saga as the main saga, which would be exported, which would have all or yield all. And to start with, watch login user. Then we'll have others as well. But I believe this, what I've done as far as the user saga is concerned, this whole setup is clear to all. Yes, everyone? All right, I'd like to have a confirmation from all the participants. Okay. So this being done, now we have exported the user saga. I'd go into the root saga and I'd import it over here. And I'd go for user saga, and that's it. User saga is now linked to the whole system. It'll start listening to the login user action. So let's try. If I go for some invalid username and password, yep, you can see that something went wrong. But if I go to the inspect element, you see that error message that came in, which is an object, and that is message invalid credentials. So I can simply go for e.message, and that will give me the invalid credentials message as well. Yep, that same message comes there as well. All right, so that happens. And if I log in successfully, all right, if I log in successfully, the user logged in action is put. So if I do that, you can see user logged in. It doesn't redirect because that redirection is something that we'd like to know more. But this logout button now appears instead of the login and register links. All right, that is all because of this user logged in, where it goes to the reducer, and the user reducer returns as the action.user. And because this navigation that we have, it is all mapped to the state, you're getting the logout user or the logout button based on whether the user is there or not. If I reload, for example, if I reload this browser, what do you think should happen here? Anyone? If I reload the browser, Jinesh says that it should stay the same. Remember, Redux is a Redux state. It's a normal browser variable. All right. Redux state is a normal browser variable, which means if I refresh my browser, Ketan is correct, it'll go back to the initial state and it would give us this. All right. Because it's a browser's variable, we might want to make it persist. That is something that we have to do as developers. As of now, it's just the browser's variable, and that's why it goes back to the initial state. It refreshes, resets itself. All right. So I believe Jinesh and Rita, you're clear, and with both of you, other participants also are clear that if I reload, it'll just go to the initial state. Yes, everyone. All right. Persisting with local storage can be done, so that we will do. But for now, we'll just keep going in this direction. All right. So this user saga is all working. All right. It's just that the redirection is something which is a problem. So now, can you tell me that if I'm saying correctly, that it would be okay if I redirect in line number 35? Is it true or false? If I say that it will be okay if I redirect here, like we did earlier, like the this.props.history.push, would it be okay to go for it or not? Okay. Rita says that it'll be okay. If I go for this.props.history.push tasks, all right. So as per Rita, this should be okay. What about other participants? Now you should start thinking about the problems that this would cause. At this line number 35, are we able to realize that whether the user has entered correct credentials or not? Yes or no? Are we able to figure that out here? Or which file are we able to figure that out? Whether the user has the correct credentials or not? Okay, what is the file? Rita says reducer. Reducer is just now it's just setting the user to the state. Here we might not be able to figure out whether the user has entered correct credentials or not. All right, here that is not possible. Here also it is not possible. I'll take that away. Where else do we know whether the user is keeping the correct credentials or not? It is almost the same as one of the previous examples that we went for. So Ketan says service. All right, service is a place where we know whether the user has entered correct credentials or not. All right, and here we get this whether the user has entered it or not, and we have already concluded that a better place to get the whole thing going would be the user saga. All right, this is actually the best place, where we had seen the same thing in the task saga as well, as far the alert is concerned, that rather than a service, a saga is a better place to go for, because service is only meant for getting you the results and nothing else. So what I think is, because we know in this case, in the try and catch block, whether the user is correct or not, in the try block, I can have the user redirect to the tasks page. This is actually the best place where I can have the user redirect to the task page. Yes, I believe everyone would agree with this. The try block from the user saga. Okay, we can do the same thing on the service as well, by the way, but I'm choosing the try block because service is really very specific to get the data from the API and nothing more than that. All right, and hence I'll be using user saga. The only problem is here I'm not getting the history at all, right? This would just cause me an error. This.props.history doesn't have to happen. So I have to actually create an additional history variable, and I have to sync it up with the browser or with the browser router, which is there inside the index. All right, so this browser router already has its own history, but that history, which is already there inside node modules, if you recall, I mentioned that when you go for React Router DOM installation, you get the history available. So if I go for scrolling down here, you can see that there is a history object already there, history library already there. So what I can do is I can create a separate history of my own. All right, and I can use that history in the Redux-Saga as a separate independent variable, provided that I link it somehow to the browser router so that both the histories are synced together. So I can create a new file like this, history.js, and from the history I can import create browser history. I guess create browser history is the one, and const history is equal to create browser history. Let me just still see if that is the thing. Create, yeah, create browser history. All right, and I'll do an export default history. So now what this would do is this would allow me to get that history from the browser router. But the thing is, like, this history is a separate variable, browser router's history is a separate variable. So first we'd have to sync that whole thing up, and then I'll be able to do history.push anywhere I want to. All right, so first I go into the index.js, and instead of browser router, I now go with router, which allows you to get the history separately specified. When you want to have a custom history object, you can go with the router instead of browser router, which should have a history property, which should be the history that we created. So import history from history, and I'd put it in here. Now when I do this, nothing else changes. All right, if I go and get this whole thing done where I go for login, I go for tasks and whatever, this whole thing stays the same. The routing doesn't change at all. This is pretty much equivalent to browser router. All right. Okay, let me do it here. Oops, I just want to comment this out. And all right, so this router with a history is equal to browser router, because browser router has its own inbuilt history available. So these two are equal. Now this history that we have created separately is in sync with the router. So I can use this history anywhere I want to. I can use it in the service, I can use it in the Saga, but we are choosing it to use it in the Saga. So I would go for importing the history here, import history from history. And here I can go for a history.push tasks. All right, when the user successfully logs in. So if I go to the login page and if I enter something random, doesn't actually do anything. But if I go for admin, you can see that it takes you to the tasks page with user logged in successfully. Right, that would happen. And logout I might have to work on, but this is something that happens here. All right, so I believe this whole separation of the history and then syncing it with the browser router's history, so that we can use it elsewhere as well if we want to, that whole process is clear to you, right? Okay, very good. Very good. All right, and then we can go for a logout as well. Like I can go for a watch logout, a user, and the logout worker all together. So I can go for that inside Saga itself. So function watch logout user, and I would yield take every types dot user, logout user. And when this happens, I can call the logout worker, and the logout worker would simply, for now, it will simply call the logout service and redirect. So function logout, it will just yield call service dot logout, and this service call right now doesn't make any sense because there's nothing there inside the logout service, but it would soon make sense. All right, so we'll go for something like yield put actions dot user logged out action. All right. So basically what I'm doing is I'm calling the logout service. I'm putting the action.user logged out action, and that would actually log out the user. So I would keep this watcher inside this watch logout user. All right. And then I would dispatch the logout user action from a component. What is the component where I will be dispatching the logout user action from? Anyone? Any suggestions? The nav component. Very good. I believe everyone agrees with Rita on this, and Shweta as well. The nav component is the one where I will be dispatching that action. In the handle logout, we have created that handler right here for that. So I would go for a logout user action import first of all. Logout user actions from user actions. And here I already have this map state to props and connect. So I can right away go for a props.dispatch. Logout user action. Oh, what I also think is that when I go for a logout user action inside the user saga, after putting the user logged out, I should go for one more thing. Can anyone tell me what that would be? After the user is logged out, what do I do in here? History.push. Very good. History.push / that'll basically take you to the login redirection. Very good. So that, and now if I go to login, all right, and if I go for correct username and password, this would be logout button would be displayed. And if I hit logout, you can see that the user would go from the state, and it will show me this login register, plus it will redirect to the whole login form altogether. This still doesn't mean that we have the authentication done. All right, tasks would still show you the tasks right away. We have not done any programming of that sort, but the flow along with the display with the user inside the state, I believe that flow along with the user inside your Redux store, that is clear to all. Yes, everyone? Just like to have a confirmation from all. Okay, what about other participants? All right. Okay, so one thing also we would like to do is, if I go for this and if I reload, we know that this gives you the login and register and the user reset. So we would like to persist the user, and for that we'd be using I have not specified at any point, but some people might know about local storage. All right, so let me just delete this. So local storage is a key value pair, and inside the local storage there will be this is different from router or anything like that. This is totally core JavaScript. It's an HTML5 API. Local storage. It has methods called get item, remove item, set item, and clear. All right. So this local storage is something that would persist. And what we would like to do is we'd like to have this local storage included, all right, where the user would be added and removed as well, and it'll persist essentially. So when the user logs in, I would like to set it inside the local storage, because what happens is if you set something inside the local storage, like for example, local storage dot set item, all right, and I'd also, if it is an object, I'd have to stringify, because local storage doesn't accept objects itself. It just accepts strings. So if I, for example, have something like this, all right, users json.stringify name abcd, then what would happen here inside the local storage is you'd get the user like a JSON string, all right, and if I, even if I close my browser and if I open it again, all right, and if I go for the same URL, localhost 3000, you'd see that inside the application you still have the user. So this local storage is where I want to get the user synced together with my Redux store altogether. So first, what I would like to do is, let me just delete it. Like if the user logs in successfully, I would like to add that user to the local storage. And if the user logs out, I'd like to remove the user from the local storage. All right. That way I would like to make it persist. All right. So I believe that first problem statement is clear to all. Shweta asks like whether the local storage is same as cookies. Now, cookies, it's a bit of a different thing. Local storage doesn't have any time limit of expiration. Cookies do have expiration limit. So that way, these two are different. Local storage would only be cleared if we clear it by one of these methods like remove item or clear. All right, Shweta? So what I want to do is if the user logs in successfully, I would like to have local storage populated. And if the user logs out, I want to take that local storage variable out of the local storage. All right. Can't we store this in the session? Yeah, there is a session storage as well available, Rita. Session storage, by the way, is the same as local storage, but the only thing is like when you close the browser, the session storage would be wiped out. So it would stay until you open the browser. So when you refresh your page, it will still stay. But when you close the browser, the session storage would not be there. So that way it tells you that you can use it in a way where, let's say if it is a social media application kind of a thing, then it is better that you use local storage because you don't want your users to keep on login even after they close their browsers and all. So it is use case based, like what out of these two would we be using. But like this local storage, there's also a session storage. Only the difference is that the session storage would be wiped out once the browser closes. It will stay in refreshes though. All right. Okay, Rita. Okay, and I would like to just ask everyone about the problem statement, that it is clear. If the user logs in successfully, I should have something inside the local storage. If the user logs out, I should get rid of the local storage. Everyone is clear with that problem statement? First of all, that is step number one though. All right, and we'd be using these methods that are provided by the local storage API for us. I'd like to have a confirmation from all. Okay, and my choice of using the local storage is the service. And the service, because service is something that deals with data, and I like to keep it that way. I would like the service to deal with the local storage data. So I have this login, and I have the logout where I'll be using the local storage, and I will not use the local storage anywhere else. All right, so that is one thing that you should always keep in mind. So before resolving, I can just go for a local storage dot set item. You can also use this in Redux-Saga, still work. All right, but it is my decision that I'm trying to go for all the data related stuff inside services. All right, so local storage dot set item, and to set an item called user, and JSON dot stringify, that will just convert the user object to a string. And this becomes easy now because local storage dot remove item can be done inside the logout method. So local storage dot remove item user can be done in logout. I can also return JSON.parse local storage dot get item user. All right. So check user would get me the user if there is any inside local storage, while logout and login would remove and set item for user respectively. So let's say if I go for the valid username and password, hit login, you can see that now the user is available inside the local storage. But then if I hit log out, the user now would be gone from the local storage. All right. So that with simple service usage, we are able to accomplish it. All right. And now we try to sync up this local storage with the store. So that is the next step that we would do. But I believe this local storage usage of get item, remove item, and set item, I believe that is clear to everyone. All right, very good. What about other participants? Okay, now I go into the store, and while I create the store, I would check that whether the user is present or not inside the local storage. So I can do something like this where I can import. This is the whole process that we should follow. So I'm not explaining much, but I'm just doing it. All right, so import uh, check user from services, user service. Here I want to get the user first, like say const user is equal to check user. So what would happen is that if the user would be there inside the local storage, it'll give me that whole object of the user, which I can then pass on to the store. And if the user would not be there inside the local storage, it'll give me null. So what I need to just do is if user, then I go for a store dot dispatch. Now this can be done in so many different ways. I'm just dispatching the action. I just want to dispatch one of the actions. So can anyone tell me from the user actions, if the user is already present inside the local storage, what is the action that I would dispatch? User logged in. Very good, Shubham. User logged in, because the user is already logged in. I can just go with the user logged in action. I'll just import it here. Action.users action, because the user is already logged in. I can just go with like user logged in, and I can go for user as its argument. It is accepting the user as an argument. So this would solve our problem. All right. Usually this user logged in action is dispatched from Redux-Saga, but we can simply dispatch it in here as well. This is just an action that we're dispatching. So now what would happen is if I have admin set inside the local storage, even if I refresh, this line would execute. All right. And the user would be there inside the local storage. And you would see that even if I refresh, now the user stays because of the user being inside the local storage. However, if I manually delete the user from here, all right, and if I refresh, at that point, you see that the login register options would be available. All right, so that is there. So if I log in and log out, that would still happen, right? Login and log out, that would still happen. But more importantly, with these like line number 15 to line number 18, we have also taken care of the persistence, right? So everywhere else the store is the reference, but here we are just checking the user from the local storage once, so that if the user is present in the local storage, we persist the user. Otherwise, we don't do anything at all. All right. So I believe this 4 lines of code, I believe this is clear to all as well. Yes. Okay. All right. Very good. I would like to have a confirmation from all the participants, please. Very good. Now, as far as the completion of the project is concerned, I was thinking that I may get done with the authenticated routes, that is higher order components itself. But I think we can keep it for later, for the next session, because this up till now it's too much to grasp. So I'd like to give you one more day to get this thing covered. However, the routes are still not authenticated. All right, it still goes on to the tasks, which is the first thing that we'll be covering in the next session that we have. All right, but as of now, what we did was we used the same things that we learned previously, and we used that to get the global alert component done. We used that to get the user flow done, and we also used that to get the user state in the Redux store done along with Redux-Saga. So I believe everyone is clear on whatever we have done so far. Yes, everyone, please confirm. All right. Very good. All right. So I think this could be, we can basically call it a day. And if anyone has any questions, please let me know. Else you can just say 0 so that I can conclude the session. So Ketan asks a question, is it also possible to store the value of the key in the local storage, but also hide it from showing in the application tab? I don't think it'll be possible, Ketan, because the browser is in control of the client, and we would not be able to do anything to it. So this also tells you that whichever token that you send in from the server, it should only contain the information which you want to publish, and password-like information should still be on the server only. All right. So anything that has to be public can be there inside the token or inside the local storage, nothing else. All right, Ketan. Okay. So I believe we can call it a day. And in the next session that we meet, we'll be going for the route authentication or guarding of routes sort of a thing with some higher order components. And then we are planning to set ourselves up for a GraphQL server. All right. So we would like to get that thing going as well. Okay. So let's call it a day, guys. And let's see you on Wednesday. Bye-bye.